The mirror had always been there, quiet, tall, and harmless, standing against the wall of her bedroom like an old, obedient servant. For years, Emma saw nothing but her reflection. Tired eyes, pale skin, the soft lines of a life too ordinary to be haunted. But one night, something inside that silver surface began to breathe. At first, it was just a faint whisper, the kind of sound your mind invents when the world outside is asleep. It came from nowhere, yet from everywhere, a voice almost identical to her own. "Emma," it said, her name spoken softly as if testing its weight in the dark. She froze. Her body knew before her mind did. Something was wrong. The air in the room thickened, pressing against her lungs. She turned on the lamp, but light didn't help. The mirror no longer showed her reflection, it showed a delay. Her movements echoed half a second late. Her face smiled when she didn't. For the next hour she stood there, staring at herself, or at something pretending to be her. Each breath was perfectly synchronized. Each blink matched hers. But when she whispered, "Hello," the reflection did not answer with sound. It answered with a smile. That night, Emma covered the mirror with a blanket. But when she lay in bed, eyes open to the ceiling, the whisper came again. Closer, clearer, more human. "Don't cover me again?" She wanted to believe she was dreaming. But deep down, beneath the skin of reason, Emma knew the truth. Whatever lived behind that glass had just learned her name. And once something learns your name, it never forgets you. In the morning, the mirror looked ordinary again, calm, reflective, and innocent. Emma stood before it, brushing her hair, pretending that last night hadn't happened. The light of day always makes fear seem foolish. Still, she avoided looking directly into her own eyes. Something inside her whispered that once you notice the difference, you can never unsee it. The apartment felt strangely silent. Even the hum of the refrigerator sounded distant, as if the walls had moved farther away during the night. She tried to distract herself. Coffee, music, sunlight, but the memory of that delayed reflection followed her like a shadow. The smile, the whisper, her name. It wasn't just imagination, it was recognition. That evening, as the sun sank into the horizon, she caught herself glancing at the mirror again. The blanket was still hanging over it, motionless. Yet she swore it was slightly higher on the right side, as if someone had pulled at it from within. Before we go deeper into Emma's story, take a breath and look around you. Are you watching this alone in a quiet room? If you are, that's perfect. This story isn't meant to be heard in the noise of daylight. It's for those silent hours when your reflection stares back longer than it should. And before we continue, don't forget to subscribe for more English stories like this, slow, real, and a little unsettling. Leave a comment telling me where you're watching from, your city, your country, or maybe the place where your own mirror stands. Now let's pull away the blanket and see what really lives behind the glass. Emma decided not to think about the whisper. Morning light always erased strange memories, turning fear into nonsense. She told herself she had been tired, that the voice was only a leftover dream. People hear things when they are half asleep. That's all it was. But as she brushed her teeth, she caught her reflection pausing just a fraction too long after she moved. She blinked once. Her reflection blinked twice. It wasn't immediate. It hesitated, as if considering whether to follow. Emma froze, toothbrush still in hand, foam trembling at her lips. The delay was small, half a second, yet it felt enormous. She leaned forward, her heartbeat echoing in her ears. "Stop it," she whispered, as if her reflection could hear her. The moment she spoke, the image corrected itself, perfectly synchronized again. She laughed nervously. "You see? Nothing's wrong." Her voice sounded hollow in the bathroom. The silence afterward pressed against her like a hand on her chest. All day, she tried to keep herself busy. She worked from home, answering emails and pretending everything was normal. But the mirror in her bedroom called to her. Every time she passed by, she could feel its presence, not watching, but waiting. It was the kind of attention you feel in crowded rooms when someone's eyes are fixed on you. Only this time, there was no one else. By evening, the unease became unbearable. She grabbed her phone and called her best friend Lisa. "Do you believe in reflections?" Emma asked, her voice low. Lisa laughed. You mean like ghosts? No, not reflections that don't follow. There was a pause on the line. Emma, are you okay? I'm fine, she lied. But her gaze drifted toward the bedroom door, where the faint outline of the mirror's covered shape lingered like a secret. Forget it, I'm just tired. She ended the call before Lisa could answer. For a moment, she felt relief, the simple comfort of a friend's voice. But when she looked at the clock, she noticed the time. 11:07 p.m., she hadn't realized it was already night. The room was cold. Not from the weather, the air itself felt wrong, thin, electric. She stood up and walked toward the mirror. The blanket still hung there, unmoving. This is ridiculous, she said to herself, pulling the fabric away. The surface underneath gleamed faintly in the dim light. Nothing strange, just her. She touched the mirror. Her fingertips left soft marks on the glass. Her reflection copied her movements exactly. For a few seconds, everything was fine. Then, as she turned to leave, she noticed a blink that didn't match. Her reflection blinked once more after she had already turned her head. Emma stepped back, heart pounding. She raised her hand, slowly, like testing a wild animal. Her reflection followed. Too late again. The space between movement and response was now a full second. The delay felt deliberate. A smile spread across her reflection's face, faint, uncertain, like it was learning how. Emma stumbled backward, knocking a picture frame off the dresser. Glass shattered across the floor, sharp and sudden. When she looked up, her reflection was still smiling, though her own lips were trembling. Then the light flickered once, twice, and went out completely. In the darkness, she heard it again, that same whisper, closer this time, almost breathing against her ear. You shouldn't have uncovered me. Emma couldn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she imagined the mirror's delay, the smile that didn't belong to her. The whisper replayed over and over, faint but insistent. She wondered if her mind was breaking, if fear alone could make something so ordinary feel alive. In the morning, she tried to ignore it. She avoided her bedroom entirely, sitting with coffee in the kitchen, pretending the mirror didn't exist. But the apartment was too quiet. The faint creak of the floorboards sounded like footsteps. The shadows in the corners of the room seemed to stretch longer than they should. Emma picked up her phone and considered calling Lisa again. Maybe sharing it would make it less real. But when she looked at the screen, the reflection of her own hand was slightly delayed on the glossy surface of the phone, just as it had been in the mirror. She dropped it, heart racing. She spent the day outside, walking the empty streets of her neighborhood. People passed her, unaware, absorbed in their own lives. Emma felt like a ghost herself, invisible yet hyper-aware. She tried to laugh at the absurdity. Surely, she thought, the mind played tricks when alone too long. Returning home, the apartment felt different. The air was heavier, and the mirror seemed to draw her gaze even from across the room. She hesitated at the doorway, reluctant to face the object that now felt like a living presence. She told herself it was impossible, but the pull was undeniable. She uncovered the mirror slowly, her hands trembling. The reflection was perfect, serene, almost innocent. Yet beneath the calm, she felt something watching, learning. She lifted a hand, the reflection hesitated, lagging fractionally behind. It was subtle, almost polite, but Emma noticed. That split-second delay was deliberate, calculated. Emma spoke aloud, testing the air. "Who are you?" No reply came. Only silence, thick and suffocating, pressing against her eardrums. Then, just as she was about to turn away, a faint echo of her own voice whispered back, "Emma." She spun around, but the room was empty. Her apartment looked the same, familiar and ordinary. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling that something remembered her. The mirror wasn't just reflecting. It was observing, storing fragments of her movements, her habits, her voice. It was learning. Panic rose. Emma wanted to smash it, to destroy the glass and erase whatever presence lingered behind it. But she hesitated. Part of her feared what might come if she did. She imagined the mirror cracking, shattering, and something stepping out from the fragments. The thought made her freeze, paralyzed. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the covered mirror. It seemed calmer now, sleeping, perhaps. But the whisper returned, soft and deliberate. brushing against her mind like a breeze through a cracked window. "I know you," Emma shivered. She didn't know whether to be terrified or utterly fascinated. By midnight, she realized the mirror's memory was growing. Small delays had become patterns, subtle movements that mirrored her actions with a slight, eerie difference. Emma couldn't tell if it was mocking her, learning from her, or preparing for something she couldn't yet imagine. She curled up under the blankets, heart racing, knowing the night was far from over and the mirror would be waiting, patient and silent until she could not ignore it anymore. Emma moved through her apartment as if walking in water, every glance toward the bedroom mirror filled with dread. She tried to act normal, but her mind constantly returned to the faint delays, the mirrored smile, the whisper of her name. Something in the glass was adapting, anticipating. She began noticing details she had missed before. The reflection sometimes held a fraction of a second longer on her face, tracing emotions before she fully felt them. Anger, sadness, hesitation, all of it rehearsed in advance, a mimicry that made her skin crawl. Emma started speaking to herself aloud, testing her own words. "I am fine," she said, once, twice, 3 times. The reflection repeated after her, always a beat too late. And then one evening it smiled before she had even finished speaking. That was new. That was deliberate. The apartment grew colder as the days passed. Not the ordinary chill of autumn, but a thin, invasive cold that wrapped around her chest. She noticed the shadows stretching differently, too long, too purposeful. Even the sounds of the city outside seemed muted, filtered through some invisible glass that separated her from the world. Emma tried to leave the apartment. She walked the streets at night, hoping movement and fresh air would calm her mind. But no matter where she went, she felt eyes on her. She imagined people staring, but she knew it was the memory of the mirror following her. A presence she could not shake, learning her patterns, tracking her steps. Returning home, she avoided the mirror completely. Every object in the room seemed to hum with anticipation, but the mirror was central, radiating an unspoken patience. She covered it with the blanket and tried to sleep. But as she lay in bed, the faintest sound brushed against her ear, a soft whisper she could almost convince herself she imagined. "Come closer." Emma felt a compulsion she didn't understand. Her hand moved on its own toward the blanket, dragging it slightly aside, just enough to glimpse the reflection. The surface shimmered, catching the dim light of the lamp, and for a heartbeat it looked entirely normal. Then the subtle wrongness returned. Its eyes lingered on hers a moment longer than they should, tilting with curiosity she could not define. She spoke again, testing the waters. "What do you want?" The voice inside her head was quiet, calm but undeniable. "I want to know you," it whispered, impossibly close, as if sliding between her thoughts and reality. Emma shivered. That wasn't her own voice. That was something else, something patient, intelligent. For the first time, she noticed the mirror seemed to react to her emotions. When she felt fear, it leaned in slightly, tilting its surface. When she felt frustration, it mirrored impatience. It was learning not just her movements, but her feelings, her intentions. The thought made her recoil. She had never believed objects could hold consciousness, yet here it was, staring, waiting, mimicking. By midnight, Emma realized she could no longer pretend it was a coincidence. The delays, the anticipations, the subtle signals, they were a language she did not yet understand. The mirror had become a teacher of dread, a silent observer that could predict her reactions. And in the quiet, she knew the truth. It was not only watching, it was learning. And learning, she thought with a shiver, was always the first step toward claiming. Emma woke to a silence that felt wrong. The apartment was still, too still, as if holding its breath. Her eyes instinctively went to the bedroom, where the blanket still hung over the mirror. She felt a pull, a magnetic tension she could not resist. Slowly, she rose, every step heavy with anticipation. The blanket was no longer perfectly draped. A small corner had lifted, as if nudged by invisible fingers. She reached for it cautiously, fingers trembling. The mirror beneath gleamed in the dim morning light, ordinary at first glance. But the reflection was subtly different. Her own eyes seemed heavier, darker, and for a moment she thought she saw a faint smirk, not of her making. Emma tried to speak to assert control. "I see you," her voice wavered. The reflection's lips moved perfectly synchronized, but a flicker of delay betrayed a mocking curiosity. The mimicry was no longer subtle, it was deliberate, intentional. She felt her chest tighten as an instinctive dread curled in her stomach. Days blurred together, and the mirror's learning accelerated. Emma noticed her own movements beginning to anticipate the reflection, as though the apartment itself had become an extension of its memory. When she raised a hand, the mirrored hand hesitated slightly before following. When she turned her head, the reflection held the angle a heartbeat too long, savoring the delay. The whispers returned, louder now, threading through the silence like silk-coated steel. Closer, closer. They came from inside the glass and from behind her thoughts. Emma covered her ears, but the sound seemed to pierce through. She wanted to run, to escape, but the apartment's doors and windows felt like boundaries she could not cross. One night, she found herself speaking to the mirror as if it were a person. "Why are you here? What do you want from me?" The response was almost gentle, almost patient, yet terrifying in its inevitability. "I want to understand. I want to know you completely." The voice slid along her nerves, sending shivers down her spine. She realized then that fear alone was not the power at work. It was attention, calculation, study. Objects in the apartment began behaving differently. The shadows cast by her lamp seemed to linger, twist, and stretch toward the mirror. Even the reflections of furniture and doors bent subtly when she glanced at them. Emma began to wonder whether the mirror was expanding its reach, imprinting itself into the world outside its frame. Her sleep became fragmented, dreams bled into reality. Reflections in other glass surfaces hesitated, paused, mirrored her movements just slightly offbeat. Each time she blinked, she caught the faintest flicker, a grin too knowing, eyes too curious, waiting for a moment to strike. Her own mind felt invaded, as if her instincts were being copied, catalogued, and anticipated. By the fourth night, Emma felt the mirror's patience and cunning. It was no longer a silent observer. It was a strategist playing a subtle, terrifying game. She could feel her own thoughts mirrored back, measured, examined. The realization made her stomach churn. The mirror was preparing. Preparing for what, she did not know, but the certainty that something would happen was undeniable. Standing before the mirror that night, she whispered, almost pleading, "I won't let you take me." The reflection paused. For one heartbeat, it mirrored her perfectly. Then, a faint, cruel smile appeared before she had the chance to move. The whisper came again, now stronger, sharper, undeniably present. "You are already part of me." Emma could no longer distinguish between waking and dreaming. Every glance at the mirror sent shivers down her spine, each shadow and flicker of light a reminder that something beyond understanding had learned her movements, her patterns, even her fears. The apartment felt alive, and the mirror its silent, patient heart. That night, she stood before it, hands hovering uncertainly above the blanket. Her reflection waited, perfectly still, almost serene. Then, as if testing her, it moved slightly before she did, a subtle tilt of the head, a shift of the eyes, measuring her reactions with deliberate precision. Emma spoke aloud, voice trembling. "I don't belong to you," the mirror responded, not with words but with subtle mimicry. A slow, deliberate smile, a blink just out of sync, an almost imperceptible lean forward. She realized it was no longer just learning her. It was matching her, anticipating her, rewriting her own reality in miniature. She tried to back away, but her feet felt heavy, rooted to the floor by invisible threads. Panic welled up, but curiosity, a dark, irresistible pull, forced her gaze back to the glass. Every instinct screamed to flee, yet she could not look away. The apartment seemed to breathe with her, every creak of the floorboards a whispered encouragement or warning. The whispers returned, louder, more insistent, almost singing in cadence with her own heartbeat. "Closer! Closer!" They seemed to crawl along her nerves, brushing her thoughts with icy precision. Emma felt her own reflection's eyes studying her, calculating, waiting for the precise moment to act. A sudden flash of movement caught her off guard. Her reflection raised a hand of its own volition, before she could even think to move. Emma's chest tightened, breath caught, and she realized the truth. The mirror was no longer reflecting her. It was extending itself, existing slightly beyond the glass, a shadow of consciousness that did not belong in the ordinary world. She slammed the blanket over it, heart hammering. Darkness swirled in the room, oppressive and thick, yet the whisper persisted. "You cannot hide." Emma sank to the floor, tears burning her eyes. She wanted to scream, to break free, yet the weight of inevitability pressed down, a reminder that some forces do not negotiate. Minutes or hours passed, she could not tell. The apartment had lost the cadence of time. In the oppressive silence, the mirror seemed to pulse faintly beneath the fabric, a subtle vibration that made the floorboards tremble under her. Emma's mind teetered on the edge of disbelief, terror, and fascination. Finally, she dared a glance. The blanket had shifted slightly. Beneath it, a pair of eyes gleamed, not quite her own, not quite human. The reflection, or whatever had learned her patterns, smiled again, slow, deliberate, patient. "We are already together," it whispered. The words were soft, almost tender, yet the finality in them chilled her to the core. Emma collapsed backward, unable to comprehend whether she had lost herself or if the mirror had merely become another version of reality. The apartment settled into silence, but it was a silence that spoke, a silence that remembered. And in that silence, she understood one immutable truth. Once something behind the mirror learns you, it does not forget. It waits, and it waits patiently. The apartment was quiet once more, but Emma no longer felt the comfort of silence. Every shadow seemed to linger longer, every reflective surface carried a weight she could not shake. The mirror sat covered, yet its presence pulsed through the room like a heartbeat she could not escape. She wondered if she would ever be alone again, if the whispering patience of that glass would follow her into every corner of her life. Sometimes, in the stillness, she thought she could hear it, faint and deliberate. "I know you." The words were no longer terrifying, not exactly. They were patient, inevitable, a reminder that some things cannot be undone, and some presences do not require permission to exist. Emma left the apartment the next morning, the city bustling around her as if nothing had changed. Yet behind her eyes, the reflection lingered, memorized, patient, and eternal. And for anyone who glances too long into a mirror late at night, a faint lesson remains. Some voices are always listening, and once a mirror knows your name, it waits, patiently, silently, endlessly, for the moment you cannot resist looking back.